What is up, my friends? Welcome to our set review here. Theros Beyond Death is almost here, and I'm really excited. You should be too. We just did white. If you missed that, it's up on the YouTube. Check that out, of course, during the full set review. 7 total videos going through each color, and white's probably the worst color of Magic, right? Well, we're about to do the best color of Magic. We're going to do blue. I want to remind everyone that I am doing the early access stream. Big thanks to Wizards of the Coast for running this. Probably the most fun piece of content that I do. One day, all the streamers get together one day early and get to just blast as much Theros Beyond Death as they want. I'll be playing my usual 10 new decks, as I always do at this event, and I'll be writing about them on CoolStuffInc.com on Friday. Not going to want to miss that. That's next Wednesday coming up, and you'll be able to see my article, which I always do, 10 new brews. I go over each deck. It's going to be a lot of fun, CoolStuffInc.com. That is going to be this coming Friday. If you're watching this on YouTube, though, maybe it's last Friday. Friday the 17th of January in the year 2020. The year of our Lord, Heliod. Alright, so let's get to blue. I'll be going through the entire set with a focus on Constructed, but I'll be discussing limited cards a little bit as well, because some cards obviously aren't playable in Constructed. And we're going to go through, and let's just do it. Let's just get right into it. First card up is another name I can't pronounce. Alli-Rios Enraptured. We have a 3-mana, 2/3. So we talked a lot about rate in the white part. I'll recap that really fast. Rate is just the raw numbers on the card. Questing Beast has a really good rate. It's a 4/4 haste for 4. That's really good. And you put a whole bunch of stuff on it, makes it great. Stark Prospector, not a very good rate. A 1/1 for 1. It's only good because it has great abilities. So your rate, if your rate is good, your abilities feel like a bonus. If your rate is not good, the abilities have to be awesome. So we have a legendary 2/3 for 3 here on rate. Not too great. Comes to the battlefield tapped. Does not untap during your untap step if you control a reflection. When it enters the battlefield, create a 3/2 blue reflection creature token. This card is really good. So basically, this just kind of comes into play tapped. So it's just off to the side, it stays tapped. You can't really use it. And then it makes a 3/2 token. And then when the token goes away, you no longer control a reflection, so this card untaps. So effectively, this is a 3-mana for a 3/2 and a 2/3. That's pretty good, honestly. I don't know exactly what deck would want this. It's a blue creature. Typically, blue is not really a creature deck. This is kind of a value card. It's kind of like your 3/2 dies, you get a 2/3. Obviously, you can flicker it and do kind of cool tricks with it and stuff like that. You can definitely just keep flickering it over and over and over again to make more 3/2s. This card is very good limited because, the Deathbloom, Thallid, cards like that, cards that die to give you an effect are just always very good and limited because they're just 2-for-1s. Does Constructed really want this effect? I'm not really sure, honestly. Blade Splicer, yes. It's kind of similar. It's the kind of card where on rate alone, I think a 3/2 and a 2/3 for 3 is actually quite good. It might not be good enough for Constructed because there might not be a deck that actually wants this effect, but the rate is there. The rate is definitely there. And if you start flickering it, that's really cool too. This is a cute card. I think this card's very good and limited. I could definitely see playing Constructed if there's a deck that wants it. The big question is there a deck that wants it? That's the question that has to be answered. But I think this card's a lot better than it looks. Ashiok's Erasure. We have a 4-mana enchantment. It's got flash. Comes into play, exiles a spell. Your opponent can't cast spells with the same name as the card, and when it leaves the battlefield, the card goes back to their hand. So what's important to note, it goes back to their hand, not to the stack. It's not like Spell Queller. So that's a little better because it kind of unsummons a spell, worst case scenario. This card is interesting in a lot of ways. It is a kind of a pseudo Nevermore, like summary dismissal kind of split card. 4 mana for a counter spell is not great, but it exiles a spell, so it can counter uncounterable spells, and then as they go to the graveyard, that's true. It provides devotion by being an enchantment. However, being an enchantment is also makes it much more vulnerable. It's hard to think of a deck that would want this card. Because if you're playing 4-mana counter spells in your deck, you got to be very instant speed focused. If you're playing a deck, say you're playing a devotion deck, and you just leave up this on turn 5 and say go with 4 cards in your hand, your opponent's going to be like, really? Like, it's pretty easy to play around a 4-mana counterspell. But the effect is reasonably powerful. This feels more like a sideboard card to me than a main deck card. Somewhat similar to Ixalan's Binding. It's not super exciting. The fact that it bounces the spell back to their hand, so it's not like you get blown out by this card. One of the issues with Spellqueller is you color their Supreme Verdict, and then they just blow you out in combat 2 turns later. Or you color their creature, and they kill the Queller mid-combat and blow you out, and that just feels awful. So this just doesn't have that problem, which is kind of nice. But it is rather clunky and expensive. I say this is probably a fringe card in Constructed. It doesn't excite me too much. Probably more of a sideboard card. There are better counterspells for 4 mana. And Standard is a format where being on the board is very important. This card is not an on-the-board card. It goes onto the board. It does not put a threat onto the board. So, it feels more like a sideboard card. In Limited, this card makes me a little wary. It's just a 4-mana cancel for the most part. That doesn't really excite me. It does provide devotion, but not really excited about this. So, definitely more of a sideboard card. I think this card's definitely worse than it looks. Brine Giant. 7-mana common for a 5/6. It has affinity for enchantments. I wish they would just call it affinity. Like, isn't affinity written on the Tezzeret card that has the affinity thing? There's like a different affinity card in white. It's like the affinity for your devotion to white, but this is just essentially similar to the Serpent in Kaladesh, Mirror Enforcer, things like that. If you're playing a whole bunch of enchantments and you're in the market for a 5/6, this card's not bad. It is a very large body, and one of the nice things about a card like this is if you're playing a deck that's all in on enchantments, this is not an enchantment. One of the good things about the Serpent in Kaladesh, if you want to go way back and limit it to Mirrodin block, there was a card called Quicksilver Behemoth. I believe same cost and size as this. It had affinity, and it was especially good because it wasn't an artifact. There's plenty of shatters floating around, but killing a non-artifact creature, people want to have artifact removal against your artifact deck, but now you have this big target that's not an artifact. Now, in this case, enchantment, but that's not a thing that should be underestimated. This card probably won't see play Constructed. I just can't imagine there would be a deck that is blue that has enough enchantments to make this card good. This card has to cost 1 or 2 to be playable and Constructed. I don't see that happening super easily. Not out of the ordinary. Behemoth was a 4/5, whatever. Close enough. Power creep, now it's a 5/6, definitely not Gurmag Angle, that's for sure. But definitely, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility this card's playable and Constructed. So don't ignore it, but it's probably not going to get there. In Limited, this card seems very, very good. In Limited, if this card costs 4, you are ecstatic. So you have a lot of enchantments in your deck. This card seems awesome in Limited. Definitely don't just play it to play it, but in the right deck, this card's probably very, very good. Beloved of the Sea. This is the blue Demigod. Demigod cycle where either their power or their toughness is tied to your devotion. We saw the white version of Daxos is amazing. What do we got here? We got blue 1 for a legendary creature. It's Demigod. It's an enchantment. Its power is equal to devotion, not toughness, which is interesting. And it has 3 toughness. It's at worst a 2/3 for 3. That's not bad. It's not that bad. Creatures and enchantments you control have spells your opponents cast that target this permanent cost 1 more to cast. So kind of like the Thalia Unsettled Mariner effect for your creatures and enchantments. This card's reasonable. It's definitely not overbearingly powerful. If you are playing a deck that's a blue devotion deck, and this is going to be a 5/3 a lot of the time, that's fine. This card's very reasonable. Not a card you want to play a lot of. It definitely needs a certain deck, but this card's reasonable. This card's definitely very reasonable. Very good Limited. Just a really solid Limited card, obviously, because the rate's so good. And then in Constructed, this card could definitely see play if there is a blue devotion deck. Are there enough payoffs for blue devotion? That remains to be seen, but this card is very, very reasonable. Chain to Memory. 1 mana instant. Creature gets -4/-0 until end of turn. Scry 2. Now, I really like the card that was the clue version of this. This is a common effect in limited formats, where you get your cheap trick and you get a card off of it. This is not a card. This is only Scry 2. This is a pretty pretty rough limited card. I think this card is okay, but this is not... A lot needs to go right for this card to be good, and I don't think scrying 2 is really worth it. This is a combat trick if I have a 3-3 and you have a 3-3. But if I have a 3-4 and you have a 3-4, this does nothing. So, not really throw with this card. This is kind of middling limited filler. You're playing this card, you're not super happy, but it is not the end of the world. It is a trick if you have no tricks. It's not very exciting. Deny the Divine. 3-mana instant. Counter target creature or enchantment spell. Spells counter this way. Exile it to put it into owner's graveyard. I mean, yeah, we got to stop escape cards, right? Not playable constructed. And then in limited, I don't love counter spells in limited. They cost 3 or more. They are occasionally playable, but any good player will sniff you out and just not cast a good spell or play the spell they want to play. It does exile. It does stop escapey stuff, but I'm not about this card really at all. In limited or constructed, it's playable in limited, but I'm not happy if this card's in my deck. This card I love though. I've always loved the 1-mana blue creature that you have to pay 1,000,000 mana to draw 3 cards. This is like the third version of this card. This is by far the best one. It's a 1 blue for a 1/2 enchantment creature. That's like almost there on rate. It's not great, but it has a lot going for it. It has a second toughness. It's an enchantment, so it triggers your constellation effects. And then you can pay 7 mana and sacrifice it. Not even tap it, just sacrifice it to draw 3 cards. This card could see play in Constructed. Would it require a lot? Yes. There have to be a very specific deck that would want this card. It is a spirit. Just want to remind everyone the card Tallowisp exists in Modern, and I'm sure I'll be playing some Tallowisps on stream going forward. I love Tallowisp, and there's a lot of spirits here. But I would like this card to be playable in Constructed. It probably isn't, but it's not as far off as you think it is. And then in Limited, this card's pretty reasonable. It's Devotion, it's a Constellation Enabler, and then if you're flooding, drawing 3 cards is big game in Limited. 3 is a lot more than 2, so I think this card is sneakily better than it looks. Yeah, in Constructed, obviously you have the Spectral Sailor as an option for drawing cards, as far as flooding goes, but this would want to be played specifically in a deck that wants enchantments and constellation and so on and so forth. It's probably a pipe dream this card's playable Constructed, but I just like it. I don't know, I just like this card. Elite Instructor. Something tells me this card's not very elite. 3 mana, 4/2/2. Comes into play, loot. Unplayable in Constructed. Reasonable limited filler. I mean, obviously looting is fine. The body's pretty bad. Putting cards in the graveyard for escape is okay, but not really not a very exciting card. Not very elite. Definitely a very poor nameage here. Glimpse of Freedom. This card I like. 2 mana instant draw card. Cool. It has escape, 3 mana, exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. So I'm probably just blinded by Think Twice here. Now, if those don't know what Think Twice is a really, really good standard card. 2 mana instant draw card, flashback for 3. That card was a staple in control decks. So this is similar to that card. However, you can keep doing it over and over again, but you got to exile 5 cards. 5's a lot. That is a lot of cards. This is the kind of card that you can keep drawing off of it in a control deck as the game goes on. Cards go to the graveyard, I'll play this card again. Cards goes to the graveyard, I'll play again. But it is not stacked very well. Having 2 of these in your graveyard does nothing. And it does not play well with other escape cards. If you're doing anything else with your graveyard, that's not really going to work. So this card, I just want Think Twice. Can't a brother ever think twice? It's all I want. Just think twice. That's all I want. It's simple. Simple card. So you could obviously exile the second copy to the first copy, but that's not good. So this card could definitely be a one-of in like a control deck. It's not super exciting though. I think that they took this card. They did not want this card to be good. This is the kind of card where they're like, this promotes draw go gameplay. We don't like that kind of gameplay. We're gonna make this card bad. If it was exile 3 cards, we'd be talking. But it's just too much. Just too much. So I want it to be good. Probably not good. In Limited, though, I think this card is very reasonable because it's just a 2-for-1 at some point in the game. But if you have a lot of escape already happening, you're probably not super excited about this either. So I'm done. I'm going home. I'm not even trying to pronounce this card. We're out of here. This is done. 3 mana enchantment aura. Enchanted creature loses all abilities as a blue fish with power and toughness 0/1. This card's fun. It's not great. It's okay. I mean, being a 0/1 is much better than being a 1/1. But it can still chump block. In constructed, totally unplayable, obviously. In limited, I mean, it's okay. You're not really excited about it. Has the same problem as pacifism effects where you get blown out in combat. They can chump block with it. It's not super exciting. I mean, you definitely play this card in your deck if you need to get rid of something. Removing abilities is very important because this works on utility creatures also. But this is the kind of card you play it in your draft deck. It's okay if you need an answer. It's not the best card. You're not upset to cut this card. Provides devotion. It's an enchantment. It does things that the set necessarily wants, but it's just not great. It's not very exciting. Also, your opponent can just turn off the devotion by blocking with it. So, if you're playing it with all flyers, this card gets much, much better. But it's not that exciting. It's playable, but very unexciting. Kiora Bests the Sea God. That's a book I want to read. 7 mana Saga Mythic. Chapter 1. Make an 8/8 Kraken token with hexproof. That's just good. Having hexproof negates most of the downside of being a token. Obviously, getting your token bounced feels really bad. And you could honestly argue that 7 mana is the proper cost for an 8/8 with hexproof. It's not like game breaking. It's huge. It's huge. Chapter 2. Tap all non-land permanents target opponent controls. They don't untap until their controller's next untap step. That's also pretty good. In limited especially, this is just a dumb limited card, obviously. But even in constructed, you're plowing the road for your 8/8. You're slowing all their stuff down. It's reasonable. Chapter 3. Gain control of target permanent and opponent controls, untap it. So, this feels like a kind of a super Eldest Reborn in that all 3 modes are very good, and this card is going to create kind of a helpless feeling of they got their 8/8, which I can maybe deal with, but the next 2 turns are going to suck. And then stealing any permanent, and then don't underestimate that untap part of it, because they attack you with their big creature. If you get to steal it on tap and have it on defense, that's really big game. Volition Reigns was the confiscate that untapped from Mirrodin, whatever, returned or whatever, and untapping it is pretty important. So this is a very, very powerful effect. You're probably not beating this card in limited ever. In constructed, it's a lot for an 8/8. It's a lot. Your 7 mana card better win the game on the spot. Certainly a card to ramp into. Is it better than Hydroid Krasis? Is it better than Agent of Treachery? Probably. The thing about Agent of Treachery is that you can flicker it. You can bounce it with Teferi and cast it again. You can bounce it with whatever and cast it again. So, constructed playable, probably. And then just take this limited, beat your opponent with it. Don't feel bad about it either. God, these names are unreal. Medomai's Prophecy. 2 mana, uncommon saga. So a little less exciting than the last one. It does have 4 chapters, though. And you can't bounce all of these sagas with a Teferi, but it's very, very true. It is a very relevant thing. Teferi gets even better. Chapter 1, Scry 2. That's fine. Chapter 2, choose a card name. Okay. Chapter 3, when you cast a spell with the chosen name for the first time this turn, draw 2 cards. That's not bad. The problem is that you're telegraphing your play. You're telling them what you're going to name. Maybe they make a play that makes you not want to cast it. It is definitely super awkward. You name a kill spell, they don't play their creature, you so on and so forth. So this card does seem better in a more proactive strategy where you're just like naming your 4-drop and playing it. Drawing 2 cards is big game, but it takes 2 turns to draw 2 cards. That's kind of tough. Chapter 4, look at the top of each player's library. So, 2 chapters here feel like they don't really do much. Chapter 2 and Chapter 4 are kind of like... But 2 mana, scry 2, and then suspend 2, draw 2 is certainly reasonable. But very, very awkward card. It's funny because the 4th chapter is actually really relevant as far as bouncing it. Because if you have a Teferi, it gives you an extra turn. Like I said, it doesn't really matter because it would sack on. Like, you draw the cards, it sticks around, you could play a Teferi and then bounce it, rather than it just dying on chapter 3. So it's almost like the 4th chapter, like, just is there to make it so you can bounce it with Teferi. But definitely a very weird card. It's hard to know what kind of deck wants this card. Because, again, the problem is you name a reactive card, then it'll play into it, and so on and so forth. It's hard to parse this card, honestly, without playing with it. And then in Limited, I mean, any draw 2 in Limited seems reasonable. So this is probably a very reasonable Limited card. Reclamation, this could be cool. I'm not sure. There's definitely things going on here. If your 2 mana card that has the potential to draw 2 and scry 2, it's very, very reasonable. This is a weird card, though. Definitely a weird card. You can name a land if you want to, but you cast a spell. Don't cast a land. Memory Drain. Counter target spell, scry 2. Not even sure if Dismiss is playable in Standard anymore. This card's terrible. I would not play this card in any format. Natter, Kraken, blue 1 for a 2/3. I like this card a lot. This card's really cool. Whenever you draw a card, you can pay 1. If you do, put a counter on it and make a 1/1 token. When you draw the first card off this card's awesome. It becomes a 3/4 that makes a 1/1, and then it just keeps going. The problem with this card, of course, is if you play it and then it just dies, you get no value out of it. But also the problem with this card is what deck actually wants this card. Clearly this card wants to be played in a deck that's drawing a lot of cards, but decks that draw a lot of cards don't necessarily want creatures. The power level is there. On raw power alone, this card is very good, even if all you're doing is drawing for your draw step. But control doesn't want a random creature. So it's a very interesting card. Similar to Hero Precinct 1, I can definitely buy that. But hard to get the immediate value out of it, but the power level is certainly there. If this card finds a home, it's very reasonable. This card just busted in Limited. If you have this card in play for 2 turns in Limited, you're not going to lose. Basically ever. So definitely the power level is there for Constructed. Needs to be a card to find it. I can't pronounce any of these names. Naiad of the Hidden Coves, 3 mana for a 2/3. It's an enchantment creature. As long as it's not your turn, spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This card's kind of cute. Sort of like a Baral for your opponent's turn. But I said it right apparently. It's pretty cool. It's not super exciting. If this costs 2, we can talk a little bit, but reducing casting costs in your opponent's turn, yeah, you can make your card draw spell cost less, but this is not a constructed playable effect. And then in Limited, the rate's probably not good enough to really excite you as a 2/3 for 3. I'm pretty unexcited about this card on all fronts. Just not a very exciting card. You can't have your Enabler cost 3, which doesn't really help. If it had flying, if it was a 2/2, if it had something else going on for it, I'd be excited about it, but this card's just pretty mopey. And it makes sense. They don't like to push cards that make control cards good, so... Nyxborn Seaguard, 4 mana for a vanilla 2/5. Omen of a Sea, 2 mana flash, comes into play, preordain, and then sack it to scry 2. 2 mana is much more than 1. Cantrips that cost 2 tend to suck. Discovery Dispersal, I know people love that card, who are like, oh, Discovery Dispersal is great. No, it's not. Your setup card can't cost 2. 2 is double the cost of 1. And on top of that, turn 2 is much more important than turn 1 is in Constructed. Your turn 2's got to be good. You can't waste your time, However, so I think played straight up as I'm going to play 2 and play this card and maybe I'll sacrifice it later, totally not good enough. If played for synergy, this card starts to see a little bit better. It helps your devotion. It's a permanent. You sacrifice it to Doom Foretold. You can bounce it with Teferi. Teferi's so good. It's so sick how much better Teferi gets in this set. You can bounce it, you can play it again, that's really good. So this card's very playable because of that. But this card is playable not because of the rate, because of how it interacts with a whole bunch of other cards. You can flicker it, you can bounce it, you can devotion it, you can do all sorts of stuff. So definitely a reasonable card, compares very favorably to the eggs, for example, that would be played in Doom Foretold. Doom Foretold plays Golden Egg because it's a 2-mana card that draws a card. This card's much better than that. So, very reasonable card. We'll definitely see play, but it's not on rate. It's on synergy for sure. One with the Stars. 4-mana enchantment. Enchanted permanent is an enchantment and loses all other card types. So this is basically like Ixalan's, or a cast-out effect. For only creatures and enchantments, this card kind of sucks. This is not a constructed playable card. And if you're mono blue and you just like have to have a card to beat a god or something, this can do it, but not playable constructed. In limited, it's fine. It's fine. It doesn't make the card do anything, right? Actually, I'm sorry. It keeps the abilities. It loses the card types, not lose the abilities. So this does not stop utility creatures. Obviously, it only stops enchantments and creatures. This card sucks. It's just not a very good card. Protean Mage. 2-mana, 1/1. Constellation, whenever enchantment comes into play, you can have this copy another creature. Not very exciting. This Phantasmal Image, this is not. Requires a lot to go right. You gotta be playing enchantments. You gotta be copying things that are relevant. Not playable constructed. And then in limited, this card's reasonable. It's just usually the best creature on the board. But not super exciting. Yeah, it's kind of a fun casual card. It's not really super cool. Riptide Turtle. 2-mana, Flash Defender 05. I mean, it is not outside the realm possibility this card could see getting constructed if a mono blue control deck were to exist, but it's pretty mopey overall. Not a very exciting card. And then you gotta be really defensive and limited to want a card like this. Not very good. Sage of Mysteries, your Hedron Crab style card. They don't want cards like this to be good, especially with Escape being good. 0-2 for 1. It's not an enchantment itself. If this card was an enchantment creature, I'd be much more interested because it would fuel itself. But only mills 2 cards, not 3. Typically, you want to turn these cards on yourself, not your opponent. It's not a very exciting card. Obviously, if there's some sort of infinite loop where you can like loop 2 enchantments and just mill your opponent, yeah, this card could definitely do that. But aside from that, not excited in constructed or in limited. Sea God's Scorn. 6-mana, bounce 3 creatures. I mean, typical limited like game breaker card. If your limited deck needs a way to win, yeah, that'll do it. Unplayable constructed. It's pretty simple. Shimmerwing Chimera. Said that one right. 4-mana, 3/2 flyer. Beginning of your upkeep, return 1 other target enchantment you control to its owner's hand. Not playable constructed, but you are going to lose to this card so many times in limited with them bouncing those stupid like draw preordained card make 2 1/1 cards. What are they called? The Omens. You're going to lose to this card in limited so many times. Omen this, omen that, do it again, do it again. So very good limited card, unplayable constructed. Gonna be a frustrating one if you can't kill it. Shoal Kraken, 5-mana for a 3/5. Constellation, Loot. Unplayable constructed. Very reasonable limited card. Looting is very good in limited, especially on a creature of this size. Obviously, Merfolk Looter is good in limited, but I think looting is very overrated if you're not using the graveyard. And looting is better in the late game, not in the early game. So I'd much rather see a looting effect on my 5-drop than my 2-drop. And the sizing is reasonable here because it can sit and play, make some blocks, and buy you time. So you can loot your lands away and then draw cards. I like this card in limited. It's a very reasonable card. Sleep of the Dead. 1-mana sorcery, tap a creature, doesn't untap, escape. 3, exile 3 cards. I mean, if you really need a way to break through in limited, this is okay, but it's not a very exciting card. This is not a trick. This is literally I just need to push through blockers to beat you card, and it's usually pretty unexciting in limited. Unplayable constructed. It's a sorcery. Cool art, but not very exciting. Starlight Mantle, 2 mana, enchantment aura. Comes into play, creature gets hexproof, gets +1/+1. They love these 2 mana Ladstop plating, whatever, give things hexproof effect. Compare this card to Blossoming Defense. Doesn't compare favorably. It is an aura, it's an enchantment for Constellation, it's a devotion pip. I know it is flash, so that's why it's a trick, but +1/+1 is not a great thing to leave over. It compares somewhat to Indomitable Will, but the second toughness missing is pretty tough for winning in combat, and then hexproof is a little hard to leave up too. It's okay. It's not great. It's a trick. Not playable and constructed, and then in limited, you don't want too many of it. Maybe you want one. It's okay. It's not great. Stern Dismissal. Unsummon that can only unsummon your opponent's things, but can also bounce enchantments. This is the kind of card where if auras are really popular, this card's obviously very good. Voyage's End in Theros was a 2 mana unsummon with Scry 1. Very good card. Because Bestow is so popular, and enchantments are popular, and monsters is popular. So, because of the context of the format, bounce spells were really, really good in that one. Will they be good in this one? Not sure. There are less auras. There's no Bestow. Not being able to bounce your own stuff sucks. Losing the flexibility of unsummoning a creature to save it, of saving it from an aura. These are really important parts of what made unsummon a reasonable card. And unsummon's not even that good anyway. So, this card's okay. I do have a pretty strong love for 1 mana tricks in limited because they're so hard to play around, but it's not that exciting. And then in constructed, this card's probably not playable. This can bounce an aura, can save your auras. It can bounce their auras to kind of blow them out, but it's not very exciting. Stinging Lionfish, 2 mana, 2/1. You cast your first spell on a turn. You may tap on your opponent's turn. You may tap or untap target non-land permanent. It's okay. It's not super exciting. You might be able to ambush someone on their turn. You can tap an attacker maybe. It's just a random bear. It's fine. It's an enchantment creature. I think being an enchantment is a pretty nice thing for Constellation. It's 2/1. If you want a 2-drop in limited, this card's reasonable, unplayable, constructed. Sweet Oblivion, 2 mana sorcery. Put the top 4 cards in their graveyard, and then escape for 4, exile 4 cards. I mean, this is definitely a possible, you draft the mill deck in the format. That's often a thing in limited. You take the mill cards and mill them out. We just saw Merfolk Secret Keeper, whatever it's called. It's been a thing in various formats. If you want a win condition for your deck in limited, you have a lot of good control cards. This could definitely be it. I would say it's unplayable constructed. If it costs 1, we'd be talking, but not very exciting. You can mill yourself to turn on your escape stuff, but it's not very exciting at 2 mana. So I think this card's pretty bad and constructed, and it is obviously possibly a win condition in limited, but I'm not really stoked about it. Your deck needs to be very, very controlling. Alright, we got a God. Thassa was the best God in Theros. This Thassa is not as good. 4 mana, enchantment creature, God. It's a 6/5, pretty big. Devotion 5 or more, it's a creature. On your end step, you can exile up to 1 other target creature you control, and then return it back to the battlefield. So you can flicker 1 creature on your end step. The fact that you can do it immediately is really cool. So you don't gotta wait till your upkeep to do it. You play it and get to use it immediately that turn. And then you can tap another creature for 3 mana, kind of just a mana sink. But flickering things is definitely a powerful effect if you can make it work. You gotta have a lot of things working for it. It's only creatures, so we're not bouncing that enchantment. Draw cards. Flicker decks tend to need a critical mass of good effects to flicker. For flickering Agent of Treachery or flickering Elite Guard Mage, yeah, these are really cool. But is that worth a 4 mana enchantment? Are we playing enough blue pips to get this to be a creature? Is that what we want to do? Do we need a 6/5 creature in our flicker deck? It's kind of a weird card in that respect. You can use this with active treason effects. You can threaten their creature and then keep it, which is kind of cool. It says under your control, not its owner's control. So that is a pretty cool effect. That is definitely cool. But it's not entirely clear what this card wants to do. It does work with Master of Waves too. That is very cute, yes. But I don't know. And this is the difference between 4 mana and 3 mana. Where at 3 mana, this card actually really excites me. But if you're tapping 4 and you're not really affecting the board, It's tough. It's a tough place to be in Standard. There's some power here. Is it good enough for Constructed? I'm not really sure. In Limited, it's a Mythic, it's a God. Take it, win the game, it's fine. But tapping 4 mana and not affecting the board on turn 4 is really, really tough. Yes, if you steal your opponent's things with a threatened effect, you can keep it forever. So you can play this on turn 5 and then claim the firstborn of their creature and then exile it and keep it. That is cool. That is cool. But is there really a blue-red steal your stuff flicker deck out there? I don't know. Where's this card go is the biggest question. It is by far the biggest question. That's his intervention. So once again, we have a cycle of interventions. Blue, X, double modal spells. Instant, choose one. Look at the top X cards, put 2 of them in your hand, and the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. So if you cast it for 1, you only get 1 card, I guess. So at its absolute basest level, this is Inspiration. This is blue 2, draw 2 cards. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. And this card scales, obviously, very well. Not quite Dig Through Time, obviously, but if you're casting this for 4 or 5 or 6 mana, I mean, as the game goes on, you can do that. Obviously, X spells have that, ability. And it gets better and better as the game goes on. And then it also can counter target spell. Also, the controller pays twice X. So for cancel mana, it's a quench. Now, that's not very exciting, but on a modal spell, that's pretty reasonable. So this card is actually pretty good. Most of the interventions, the second ability is usually like a rider text. It's not very exciting. Both halves of this card are quite good. I think this card's quite good. This card is pretty exciting. It's also important to note that the card draw effect on this is look at, not draw. So Narset does not stop it. This is very, very reasonable. And then it being counters to pay twice X is also very reasonable. It's like a super syncopate and then a pseudo dig through time / inspiration. I like this card. With Narset and Teferi in the format, I don't know if a draw go style deck is possible, but this card would be very good in that deck if it is possible. Is this playable in Pioneer? It's got competition. Obviously, Dig Through Time is legal, but I don't think it's unreasonable. It also plays very well with the card Wilderness Reclamation, which is very cool. So this is one to watch. This seems like one of the better interventions for sure. And Limited, this card is definitely very good. Just a card draw spell. Again, I don't like counter spells in Limited, but as a card draw spell, it's very, very reasonable. It's also an instant too. So if Dig Through Time gets banned, this card could possibly take its place in Pioneer for sure. Not as strong, but Thassa's Oracle, blue for a 1/3. So anytime there's a 2-drop with 2 pips, you gotta watch for it because that's a lot of pips for 2 mana. Oh, this is so many words. I gotta read this card. Merfolk Wizard. When Thassa's Oracle enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards of your library, or X your devotion to blue. Put 1 up to 1, so not all of them, on the top of your library, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. If X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. I mean, feels like flavor text most of the time, but that's not a terrible thing to have attached to your cards. This is sort of just like a super Omen Speaker. Omen Speaker saw a tiny bit of play in Constructed. I may have played that card on my sideboard once or twice. Saw a little play in Devotion decks too. It's funny because Omen Speaker saw some play in Mono Blue Devotion. And this card is clearly a little bit better. So 2 pips to 1/3, and it is sort of a super scry where you get to keep 1 card on top, the rest go to the bottom, or you can bottom them all. This card's not bad. If there's a Mono Blue Devotion deck, this card is very, very reasonable. It definitely plays well with Thassa. So you want a card to flicker. This is now we're starting to see how cards are coming together here. But the power level is certainly there. This is definitely a reasonable card in Constructed. I can definitely see this card seeing play. A 1/3 for 2 is already reasonable. 2 pips is reasonable. And the effect is reasonable. And if you're in some random board stall and you have, 14 pips in play and you just cast this and win the game, that's also cool too. So I like this card. I like it a lot. And also very good Limited too. So I think this card's better than it looks. Thirst for Meaning. I don't know how this is a common. Thirst for Knowledge is one of the best card draw spells. I mean, period, right? Isn't Thirst restricted in Vintage? Doesn't see as much play anymore. Your other options and artifacts and stuff. But this card's good. If you cast this card, discard an enchantment, you're getting really good value here. You're getting an instant speed 3-mana card draw spell. It feels escape. You got to build your deck in a certain way. If you're discarding 2, now you're playing basically catalog. You're not excited at all, unless you want to actually get cards in your graveyard. But if you're discarding 1 enchantment, this is really, really good. This card's just good. That's all it really is to say. It's a pretty simple card. If you're playing a lot of enchantments in your deck, this card's really good. Being an instant's really good. We already saw some enchantments we could play in like a blue-white control deck. This card's very, very real. I'm very surprised this card's a common based on power level. I don't think it like matters that much for limited, but just on raw power level alone, I'm surprised. Very good card. The hell word is that? The Renity Singer. 2 mana, 1/3 flash flyer. Comes into play. You give -X to the power of a creature where X your devotion to blues. This is like a super version of Very Miscreant, right? The 1/2 flash flyer. This card's very real. That card saw play. Very Duelist, that's the one. Very Duelist. That card saw some play, and the effect is very good. It was a very good limited card. You know, leaving behind a 1/3 flying body is very reasonable. If this gets your opponent in combat, this is an insanely good limited card. And then this card could definitely see constructed play. If your opponent's playing, you know, an aggro deck with 2 1s in it, you got him. This card's very real. All cards count themselves for devotion, yes, as long as they're still in play when the ability resolves. So you cast the creature, it comes into play, the ability goes on a stack. If it's your only creature in play, it'll count the singer. If a singer dies first and the ability resolves, it'll be nothing. So it's until end of turn. So I like this card a lot. Very sneaky card. Looks pretty innocuous. It's a 1/3 flyer for 2. But this card could definitely see constructed play, and it is very good and limited. Kyrix, the Sudden Storm. Blue 3. Legendary creature, Elemental Giant. 4/5 flash flyer for 5 is already kind of reasonable. Spells you cast with a converted mana cost 5 or greater cost 1 less to cast and can't be countered. That's a big daddy there. This is the kind of card where I don't know what deck really wants this card. It's not durable enough for a control deck. It plays very well with Reclamation, but if you're reducing the cost of your big spells, it's sort of like, alright. I guess it's any spell. I was reading it as spells like instants and sorceries, but it's just any spell you cast. Not that counter spells are that playable anyway, and a control deck playing counter spells can probably just kill this regardless, but this card's cool. This card's definitely reasonable. The rate is certainly there as a flash flyer, 4/5 for 5 mana. The ability is relevant. This card's obviously stupid and limited because on rate, it's just way over rate. And then it constructed, it's fine in a ramp deck. It's definitely a reasonable card. It's not like you're getting that much off the ability unless you're specifically playing as a counterspell deck. And they can just counter this. So the ability feels a little bit like Rider Text to me. But at the same time, hey, it's a 4/5 flash flyer for 5, you know? I think this card isn't as good as it looks, but it's still very playable. It's just a weird card. Just a very, very weird card. Busted and limited, though. Tower Wave Mystic. 2 mana for a 2/1. It deals damage. Target player puts that many cards to land. This card's like... I'm sorry. It's target player. Other than said, when it deals damage, that player puts 2 in their graveyard. That would be terrible, because you'd just be fueling their escape. This can fool your own escape. It's just your random limited 2-drop. It's not super exciting. If you need a 2-drop, you play it. It helps your escape cards. Not very good overall. Unplayable constructed. Triton. Wave Rider. 3 mana for a 3/3. Constellation gets flying. This is limited filler. Not a very exciting card. Vexing Gull. Wow. We get an F in chat for Windrake. Poor Windrake. 2/2 flash flyer for 3. Obviously plays very well with the synergies of the playing spells in your opponent's turn in limited, unplayable, constructed. Probably a pretty solid limited card because of a Windrake's already fine, and then how it plays with the spells in your opponent's turn mechanic. Definitely a reasonable card. And then that's it for blue? No, we're not there yet. Wavebreak Hippocamp. That is a name. 3 mana for a 2/2 enchantment creature, so not great on rate. Whenever you cast your first spell during its opponent's turn, draw a card. This card is definitely cool. The problem is, you obviously want to play this card in a flash deck. But it's a 2/2 for 3 without flash. So, it's very vulnerable. It kind of plays against what you want to be doing with your deck in that regard. Therefore, it's kind of unexciting. But the power level is certainly there. If this was just in play, that's amazing. I mean, you on their turn, you bolt your creature, draw a card. You play Opt, draw 2 cards. That's awesome. But this is the kind of card where you need to look at the opportunity cost up front, and the act of just getting this card into play is somewhat challenging. If we're going to play this with Shock or with Opt, it's probably best in a blue-red deck, honestly. Because you want to play this with cheap creatures, and then on turn 4 you cast this card, say go. You see this right now? I'm sorry, I wasn't going to break the fourth wall, but Zippy's trying to escape. He's going for his big break here. Yeah, I caught you. We see you. He wants to go out. What are you doing? I hold on, folks. I'm sorry to break the fourth wall here, but hey, you're busted. You're busted. What are you doing? You're gonna break this thing. Stop it. Sorry, everyone. Very unprofessional of me to break the fourth wall like this, but Zibby's just getting in the mode for Theros. He's like, yo, I heard there's a mechanic called Escape, and I want something to do with it. Hashtag free Zibby. Make sure you put free Zibby in the comments, please. What a little monster. It is nighttime, so he's awake now. He's excited. So anyway, Wavebreak Hippocamp it's an interesting card. It's a very soft card, and it's very easy to kill. And the upside is high, but the opportunity cost is also very high. So I'm not thrilled about this card. But it's busted and limited for sure. And it could definitely see play because the power level is there. It's just the upfront cost is high. Whirlwind Denial. This card is very good. It looks like a convolute. 3 mana instant. Counter unless your opponent pays 4. But this card is for each spell and ability your opponents control. Okay? So if they cast a Bloodbraid Elf and they Cascade, bang bang. If they activate a Planeswalker Ultimate, or you're in a counter war, or there's multiple triggers on a stack, whatever it is, this card can do a lot. Hydro Crisis, perfect. Ulamog, perfect. This is a very real card. This is the card that Summary Dismissal. The card that Summary Dismissal always wanted to be. It effectively just deletes the stack. And the fact that it hits both abilities and spells, unlike, say, Mindbreak Trap, which only hits spells, this is a really, really real card. He wants to be a part of the review so bad. All right, you happy, Zibby? Are you happy you get some camera time now? You're ruining my video. You're worse than Nicole. All right? So, this card is very, very real. This honestly might be one of the best blue cards in the entire set. This card is very, very good. And the fact that it says your opponent's control. So it's not like you're going to get cheesed out by this and get your own stuff countered. This card is just great. I think this card is really, really good. So Definitely one to watch for. It seems really, really, really easy to gloss over this card as another Convolute. This is not Convolute. I know you've seen Convolute so many times, but this is a very real Magic card. I think this card is very, very good. Whirlwind Denial, no, no, and no. Witness of Tomorrows. Limited card. I mean, this is just... It's funny because back in my day, when I first started playing Magic and limit drafting, a 3/3 flyer for 4, or for 5, was, like, really good. This is just a 3/4 flyer for 4 with multiple upsides. This is just a solid limited card. Just good turf copper. Good turf copper. Good... I'm just falling apart. Good curve topper. Good mana sink. It's an enchantment. It's just a very solid card in limited. Unplayable obstructed. That's it for blue. So, from Zibby and myself here, Zibby's just being a crazy man. That's it for blue. We got more colors to do. If you're watching on YouTube, please let me know. Leave a comment. What's your favorite card in blue? Alright? Like the video, subscribe. It takes a few seconds. It helps me out so much as a content creator. And please, let me know if you like this content, basically. First set review. I love the overlay I made. Let me know what you think. And I'll see you guys for black in a little bit. Check out the next YouTube video.